My brother called on a Thursday morning while I was pruning the rose bushes out front. I almost didn't answer. My phone was inside. The coffee was hot, and the roses hadn't been touched since my wife passed 2 Octobers ago. But something made me set down the clippers and walk inside. It was Dennis. Frank. His voice was tight. Clipped. Dennis never clipped his words unless something was wrong or he needed something. Usually both. Hey, I need a favor. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Sure. What is it? I've got a situation at work. Big one. I need to fly to Denver tonight, back Sunday. Can Maya stay with you? Just 4 days. My chest went warm in spite of myself. I hadn't seen my niece in 3 months. She'd turned 8 in April and I'd mailed a card because Dennis said the weekend wasn't good for a visit. Sure, I said. Of course. You want to bring her by tonight? I'm already on 71. Be there in 20. He hung up before I could ask about her school schedule, her allergies, whether she was still afraid of the dark the way she'd been last Thanksgiving. 20 minutes wasn't enough time to do much, so I just cleared the guest room of the boxes I'd been meaning to sort through since Helen died, put clean sheets on the bed, and pulled a juice box from the back of the fridge. Dennis's truck pulled in at 4:42. Maya climbed out of the passenger side with a backpack and a stuffed rabbit missing one eye that I recognized from Christmas 2 years ago. She looked smaller than I remembered. Kids usually look bigger every time you saw them. Maya looked smaller. Hey there, sweetheart. She walked to me and stood close, but didn't hug me. Just stood there, rabbit pressed against her chest. Dennis was already reaching back into the truck for her bag. I've got her clothes for 4 days. She knows the rules. He handed me the bag without making eye contact. Don't let her stay up past 8. She doesn't need snacks between meals. I looked at him. He had new lines around his mouth. Jaw set the way our father's jaw used to set. Dennis, come inside. Have coffee before you. Can't. Traffic. He ruffled Maya's hair once, perfunctory, like checking a box. Be good. He was back in the truck before she could respond, reversed out of the driveway without looking back. Maya and I stood on the front walk, watching the truck disappear around the corner. I looked down at her. She was looking at the space where the truck had been. You hungry? I asked. She shook her head. Didn't speak. That was fine. Some kids needed time. I grabbed her bag and led her inside. That first evening, she sat on the couch and watched cartoons while I made pasta. She ate maybe half a bowl, pushed the rest around. I didn't press it. Kids had off nights. I knew that from 31 years in pediatric emergency medicine. You couldn't force a child to eat, and you couldn't force a child to talk. You waited, and you paid attention to what they did instead. What Maya did was watch the kitchen doorway the entire time she sat at the table. Not the cartoons, not her food, the doorway, like she was waiting for something to come through it. I slept lightly that night. Friday morning, I made eggs, scrambled, the way I remembered she liked them, with cheese and a little too much butter, which Helen always said was my solution to everything. I set the plate in front of Maya and poured her a glass of orange juice and sat across from her with my coffee. She stared at the plate. Maya, you want toast with that? She didn't answer. Her hands were in her lap. She was looking at the eggs the way you might look at something you desperately wanted but weren't sure you were allowed to touch. Sweetheart, go ahead. Eat up. She reached out very slowly and picked up her fork. Then she stopped, put it back down. Something settled cold in my chest. I set my mug down carefully. Hey. I kept my voice gentle. Everything okay? She looked up at me. She had her mother's eyes, Dennis's first wife, who'd left when Maya was 3. Dark and careful, and older than they should have been. Uncle Frank. Yeah? Am I in trouble? I went very still. Why would you be in trouble? Her lip trembled. I didn't finish my dinner last night. I made myself breathe. Kept my hands loose on the table the way I'd trained myself to do in trauma bays when parents were watching and panic wasn't useful. You're not in trouble, I said. You're a guest in my house. Guests eat whatever they want, whenever they want. Okay? Brok send. She looked at the eggs again. Then she picked up the fork and she ate. Not the way a hungry child eats, the way a starving child eats. The fork barely made it between bites. She cleaned the plate and looked up at me with something on her face that wasn't satisfaction. It was relief. The kind of relief that doesn't belong on an 8-year-old at breakfast. I got up and made her more eggs. My hands were steady. 31 years in the ER teaches you to keep your hands steady. She ate those too. After, she went to wash up. I sat at the kitchen table and didn't move for a while. Outside, the neighbor's sprinkler came on. A car passed. Normal Friday morning in Columbus, Ohio. Inside my chest, something that had been dormant for 3 years was waking up. I was 63 years old. I'd delivered bad news to parents in hallways at 2 in the morning. I'd held children's hands while their bones were set, and I documented injuries that sent people to prison. I'd spent 31 years knowing the difference between a child who was clumsy and a child who was scared. Maya was scared. I went to my office off the hallway. The bottom drawer of my desk still had what I was looking for. A yellow legal pad, nearly full from the last years of my practice. I flipped to a blank page. Wrote the date. Friday, September 12th. 8:24 a.m. Then I stopped and looked at what I'd written. I'd started a clinical note. Without thinking. The way you do when your instincts take over from your conscious brain. I kept writing. Subject, Maya, female, age 8. Observed reluctance to initiate eating without permission. Visible relief upon being told food was available freely. Cleaned 2 full servings of scrambled eggs after initial hesitation. Did not leave any food on plate. Stated concern about being in trouble for not finishing previous night's dinner. I paused. Read it back. Then I wrote, brother's instruction upon drop-off. No snacks between meals. I set the pen down, walked back to the kitchen, refilled my coffee, looked at the empty egg plate on the table and thought about the way her hand had trembled reaching for that fork. I picked up my phone and called my son Thomas down in Austin. It was barely 7:30 there. He answered on the second ring anyway, because Thomas had always been an early riser, and also because I almost never called before 9. Dad? What's wrong? When did you last see Maya? There was a pause. July maybe? Dennis brought her to that cookout at Aunt Renee's place. Why? How did she seem? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Quiet in the way that meant he was remembering something he hadn't paid enough attention to at the time. She was pretty subdued. I figured she was just tired. You know how Dennis gets at family stuff, kind of tense. I thought she was picking up on that. What do you mean, Dennis gets tense? He has all these rules for her. Don't interrupt, don't make noise, finish everything on your plate or we leave. Thomas paused again. I thought he was just being a strict dad. My jaw tightened. I kept my voice even. She's here for the weekend. I'm going to need you to be available by phone. Dad, what's happening? I don't know yet, but I need you to know I'm paying attention. After I hung up, I walked to Maya's room. She was sitting on the bed, drawing in a notebook she'd pulled from her backpack. I leaned in the doorway and knocked on the frame. What are you drawing? She held it up. A house. Small windows, dark walls, a tree in the corner drawn in heavy black lines. The sky was gray. There was a figure in one of the windows. Small. Hard to tell if it was looking in or looking out. Is that your house? She nodded. Nice tree. She looked at it. It's not really that nice. It dropped all its leaves in August. Dad says it's dead, but we haven't cut it down yet. I sat down on the edge of the bed. Does your dad let you draw at home? She thought about it for a second too long. If I'm done with everything else first. Everything else like what? Her pencil moved across the page. Chores. Homework. She paused, being quiet. I watched her draw for a minute. Then I said, casually, the way you learned to in pediatric medicine, what does your room look like at your house? Big? Small? She shrugged. It's okay. I have a lock on my door. I kept my expression neutral. Your dad put a lock on your door? From the outside, she said. So I don't wander at night. She said it the way kids say things they've been told enough times that they believe it's normal. From the outside. Like it was just a feature of rooms. Like every bedroom door had a lock on the outside, operated by someone else. I stood up slowly. I'm going to go start lunch, okay? Can I help? I looked at her upturned face, the single-eyed rabbit on the pillow beside her. My brother's daughter. I'd love that, I said. She made the sandwiches herself, cutting them carefully into triangles the way Helen used to. While she worked, I took my phone and typed notes in the memo app with one hand, kept my eyes on her, kept my voice light. We talked about her school and her teacher, Mrs. Holloway, and whether she had a best friend. And she said she used to, but Kayla moved to Cincinnati in June. You must miss her. She put the knife down. I'm not supposed to call her because it distracts from homework. She picked the knife back up and finished cutting. That afternoon, I called Patricia Okafor. Patricia had been a CPS supervisor in Franklin County for going on 20 years. We'd crossed paths dozens of times over the years, written up the same cases from different angles, testified in the same courtrooms. She answered on the third ring. Frank Coleman. What the heck are you doing calling me on a Friday afternoon? You're retired. I have a situation. A pause. How unofficial. My niece is staying with me for the weekend. Oh no. Tell me what you need. I walked outside onto the back porch so Maya wouldn't hear, and I laid it out. The food hesitation. The question about being in trouble. The lock on the bedroom door. Patricia listened without interrupting, which was how I knew she was taking it seriously. Patricia always interrupted when something wasn't serious. Frank, that lock. I know. A child's bedroom door locked from the outside at night is a red flag, even standing alone, combined with food-related anxiety. I know, Patricia. I know what it is. I need to know how to do this right. Document everything. Photos, if there are marks. Voice recordings, if she volunteers information. Do not push her. Do not ask leading questions. You know this. I know. I asked a bad question on day 2 and spooked her. Then you know not to do it again, she sighed. Frank, this is Dennis we're talking about. I know. You're going to set a fire in your family that won't go out. There's a child sleeping 30 feet from me who locks her sandwiches into triangles like it might be the last food she sees today. Silence on Patricia's end. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Document everything, she said finally. And Frank, don't wait too long. Saturday morning, Maya woke up early. I heard her before 6, the quiet, careful movements of a child who'd learned not to make noise. And I got up and found her sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas with her rabbit, not doing anything, just sitting there in the dark. I didn't make a big thing of it. Just turned on the light, made oatmeal, let her add the brown sugar herself, as much as she wanted. She added a lot. We sat together while it got light outside, and she told me about a book she'd read in 2nd grade about a girl who could talk to horses. And I told her about a dog Helen and I had when Thomas was small. A beagle named Walter who used to sit on the mail as it came through the slot and refused to move. She laughed. A real laugh. The first one I'd heard since she arrived. After breakfast, I got out my old Canon film camera from the hall closet. I hadn't touched it in years. Helen had bought it for me at an estate sale in 2011 as a joke, because she said the only thing I ever photographed was evidence, and she wanted me to learn to take pictures of beautiful things instead. I took pictures of beautiful things that morning. Maya in the backyard with the rabbit, Maya examining the bird feeder, Maya's hands cupped around a roly-poly bug she found under the porch step. I also photographed, as carefully and as naturally as I could, the bruise along her right forearm that showed when her sleeve pulled up as she reached into the garden bed. Finger-shaped, not fresh, a week old at least, faded to the particular yellow-green that I documented on intake forms more times than I could count. I excused myself to make lemonade and went to the office and wrote for 10 minutes straight without stopping. Saturday, September 13th, 10:47 a.m. Bruising observed on right forearm, dorsal surface, approximately 4 centimeters in length, consistent with adult grip. Coloring indicates injury occurred 7-10 days prior. Subject did not mention the injury and did not react when the arm was briefly visible. Lack of self-consciousness around bruising suggests subject has normalized its presence. My hands were steady. 31 years. That evening, she fell asleep on the couch during a movie, and I carried her to bed and stood in the doorway watching her sleep for longer than I should have. The bedroom door was open. No lock, no outside mechanism. Just a room with yellow walls and the window cracked 2 inches, and a kid sleeping with a one-eyed rabbit tucked under her chin. I called Thomas. She's scared of something, he said. It's all over her face if you know to look for it. I know, Dad. This is Dennis. I know that too. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. Sunday morning I baked biscuits. Let Maya cut them out with the old biscuit cutter Helen had used for 40 years. We had them with butter and honey, and she ate 4 and looked happier than she'd looked since she arrived. And then Dennis's truck pulled into the driveway at 11:30, and all of that fell off her face like someone had wiped a wet cloth across it. She got her backpack, got her rabbit, stood by the door. I watched the transformation, watched her pull herself in, make herself smaller, quiet herself down. 8 years old and already an expert at becoming invisible on command. Dennis knocked twice and came in. Maya, you ready? She nodded. She do okay? He asked me without looking at her. She was wonderful, I said. Dennis, stay for coffee. I want to talk to... Can't. He had his keys out. Say goodbye. Maya turned to me. Thank you for having me, Uncle Frank. She'd rehearsed that. I could hear the rehearsal in it. Formal and careful, and nothing like the girl who'd laughed about the beagle named Walter. I knelt down and hugged her. Her thin arms came around me, and she held on for just a second longer than the goodbye required. Just 1 second. I straightened up. Dennis was already at the door. I'll call you this week, I said. Sure, he said, and they were gone. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The biscuit cutter was still on the counter, a smear of honey on the edge. I went to my office and called Patricia. Monday, I drove to the main branch of the Columbus Metropolitan Library and used their copier to make 3 complete sets of everything I documented. 1 set for Patricia, 1 for a lawyer, 1 locked in my desk at home. Old habit from years of knowing that single copies of important things had a way of disappearing. Then I drove to the office of Ellen Marsh. Ellen had been practicing family law in Columbus for 22 years. We'd worked opposite sides of the table in 3 custody cases back in my ER days, and I'd respected her every time, even when she'd beaten me. She opened the folder, didn't speak for 4 minutes, just read. Mr. Coleman, she said, this is thorough. I had 31 years of practice. She tapped the photograph. The bruise. Consistent with grip restraint, I said. The coloring puts it between 7 and 10 days before observation, which is within the window of Dennis's last confirmed contact with her before drop-off. She put the photo down. The food behavior you've described. The locked door. The locked door is the one I keep coming back to. She made a note. Do you know if this has been ongoing? No. I don't know the duration. I only had 4 days. And your brother, does he have a history of this type of behavior? I thought about our father. Thought about the way Dennis had flinched when our father raised his voice at the dinner table, all through childhood, the way we both had. Thought about our father's belt and his particular talent for finding reasons. Our father wasn't a gentleman, I said. That's not the same thing. No, but it's context. Ellen nodded slowly, filed the pen. Mr. Coleman, if we file a report and pursue emergency custody, your brother will know it was you. You're the only person who had extended contact with that child recently. I understand. It will be a war. I've been in family court before, not as the petitioner. I looked at her. If that little girl goes home and I've done nothing, I will not be able to live with myself. I don't care about comfortable. I care about her. Ellen looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and called her assistant. Clear my 3 o'clock. By Tuesday, Patricia had opened a formal investigation. She called me at 7 a.m. to tell me, and I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee and 3 days of additional notes in front of me. Home visit scheduled for Thursday morning, she said, unannounced. What about Maya in the meantime? She goes to school. Teachers are watching. I've already made contact with the school counselor. And Dennis will be notified as required by protocol once we conduct the visit. That gave me approximately 48 hours before Dennis knew what was coming. He found out in 36. Wednesday evening at 6:15, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the window before I answered because 31 years in emergency medicine teaches you to look before you open. A woman stood on my porch, mid-40s, expensive coat, dark hair, expression that could strip paint. I recognized her. Renee, Dennis's girlfriend of 2 years, soon to be his wife, if the engagement ring I'd seen at Easter meant anything. I opened the door. Frank, Her voice was flat. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do." She walked past me the way people walk past you when they've already decided you're not going to stop them, into my living room. Looked around like she was taking inventory. "I know about the CPS report." I stood in my own doorway. "Dennis called you." "Dennis is a wreck." She turned around. "You have any idea what you've done?" "I have a very specific idea. He is trying." She pointed at me, and I noticed that her hand was shaking, whether from anger or something else, I couldn't tell. He has been through the worst years of his life. He lost everything with Diane, and he has been putting himself back together, and you just blew it apart. He locked his daughter in her room, for her safety. She sleeps and walks around at night. She could hurt herself. She told me about the meals, Renee. A pause. The finger came down. Kids exaggerate. She ate 4 biscuits at my kitchen table like she was afraid they'd disappear. I've treated malnutrition in children. I know what it looks like. Renee's jaw tightened. You are using that child to punish Dennis for whatever problem you two have had your whole lives. You were always jealous of him. That might be the single most ridiculous thing anyone has ever said to me, and I've worked in emergency medicine. I will tell the court you have a grudge. I will tell them you've been estranged from your brother for years. That you barely know Maya. I will tell them. Tell them whatever you like, I said. I'll bring the photographs. She went still. The bruise on her forearm, I documented it, photographed it, had it reviewed by 2 colleagues still in practice. Consistent with grip restraint. That's a clinical finding, not a family grudge. Those could have come from anywhere. They came from a hand. The question is whose? Renee stood very still for a long moment. The heat was going out of her face and something else was coming in. Calculation. If you pursue this, she said quietly, you will not see that child again. Dennis will make sure of it. Dennis can try. She picked up her bag. I want you to think very hard about what you're doing. I have thought about nothing else since Friday morning. She walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. You don't know the full story. I know enough of it. The door closed. I stood in the living room for a while. Then I picked up my phone and called Thomas. Dennis knows. What happened? Renee came to the house. Thomas was quiet for a second. What did she say? That I'd be cut off from Maya if I continued. Are you continuing? What do you think? His exhale was long. Dad, you sure about this? I thought about Maya at my kitchen table at 6 in the morning. Sitting in the dark, not turning on the lights, waiting for permission. I'm sure, I said. The CPS visit happened Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Patricia called me after. Her voice was clipped and professional, which was how I knew it was bad. The kitchen cabinets have combination locks. All of them except one which had cereal in it and about a dozen granola bars. I closed my eyes. Her bedroom door has a slide bolt on the outside. Recent installation. The hardware still has the sticker on the bottom. The room is sparse. 1 lamp without a shade. Books but no other toys visible. She has a hamper but no dresser that I could find. Patricia. Her weight, Frank. She's in the 15th percentile for her age. We've ordered a full medical evaluation. I also spoke with her teacher this morning. She's been bringing crackers to school in her pockets. Doesn't throw away her apple cores. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen. Actually sat down on the linoleum. She's been hoarding. Yes. The teacher noticed in August. She called it a quirk. I don't think it's a quirk. No, I said. It's not. I'm going to need a statement from you. Full documentation. This is going to move quickly, Frank. I'll have everything to you by 5. And Frank... She paused. He already called a lawyer. How long have I got? Long enough to be ready. Dennis's lawyer was a man named Gerald Holt. I learned this from my own neighbor, Carol, who had somehow, in the 3 days since Renee's visit, developed an information network of admirable reach. Carol was 71 and had lived across the street from me for 19 years and missed nothing. He's been making calls all morning, she told me on the porch Thursday evening. I heard Renee on the phone with someone from the bank. They're talking about money, refinancing something. Carol, I keep my window open, Frank. It's a free country. She was right, of course. And I wasn't above using what the free country offered. Gerald Holt filed a counter motion Friday afternoon. I was already in Ellen's office when she got the notification. She read it, said nothing for 30 seconds, then set the paper down. He's going for character. Your estrangement from Dennis. The age of your last contact with Maya before this week. He's going to argue you barely know the child, and this is a vendetta dressed up as concern. What else? He's also going to argue the bruise occurred during her time in your care. I looked at her. I know, she said. We have the timestamps on the photographs. We have my medical review. We have your documentation showing the discoloration was already fading upon first observation. It won't stick, but he's going to try it. And we need to be ready. What do we need? More witnesses. The teacher. The school counselor. Anyone who has observed Maya's behavior over time, not just this week. I called Thomas that night. He booked a flight from Austin for the following Thursday, 1 week before the hearing date the court had assigned, October 9th. I spent the next week making phone calls. Maya's teacher, a woman named Mrs. Holloway with 23 years in second grade and an expression like she'd been waiting for this call, agreed to testify. I've been writing things down, she told me. Since the beginning of the year, I didn't know what to do with what I was seeing, but I wrote it down, and I have photographs. She'd been photographing Maya's lunch bag, or rather the absence of one. Dennis didn't send lunch. Maya ate the free school lunch, same every day, and pocketed whatever she could fit in her jacket. There's a family in my class, Mrs. Holloway said, whose daughter has a nut allergy, and every morning the classroom aide checks bags for nuts. Maya's bag has never once had food in it, not in 8 weeks of school. The aide mentioned it to me in September. She thought maybe the family couldn't afford it. I started sending extra crackers home. Did Maya ever say anything? She said her dad said school lunch was enough and extra food made children soft. I wrote that down 4 times. The school counselor, a man named David Reardon, who looked approximately 25 years old but moved through the world with the weariness of someone much older, had already submitted a report to CPS through his mandatory reporter obligations. He gave me a copy of what he'd written up in mid-September, a week before Maya even came to stay with me. Observed food hoarding behavior. Child's self-description of meal structure at home, inconsistent with normal household norms. Attempted to contact guardian. Father returned call. Stated child was dramatic and imaginative. Dramatic and imaginative. I put that in my folder. Carol gave a written statement. So did a woman named Barbara from 2 doors down from Dennis's house, who'd seen Maya sitting on the front steps after dark on a night in August, in what she'd assumed was just a kid stargazing. She was trying the door handle, Barbara told me, on her front porch, coffee in hand. I remember thinking that was strange, like she was locked out. But Dennis's car was in the drive, so someone was home. I watched for a few minutes, and then the door opened, and she went in fast. I figured maybe she'd been out playing and it had gotten late. The door opened from inside. I don't know. I just thought, kid got locked out, parents let her in. I didn't think anything worse than that. I know. I'm not blaming you. She looked at me with her coffee and her 19 years of being a decent neighbor to someone who was hurting a child 20 feet from her driveway. I should have thought worse, she said. The medical evaluation came back on September 30th. I read it in Ellen's office while she watched my face. 15th percentile for weight. Evidence of chronic insufficient caloric intake. Mild vitamin D deficiency. Mild iron deficiency. Growth markers consistent with a child receiving significantly less nutrition than standard requirements for the past 12 to 18 months. 12 to 18 months. Maya was 8. That was 1/6 of her life. Frank. Ellen's voice was careful. Are you all right? I set the report down. I'm fine. She looked at me for a second. Then, Holt's going to depose you next week. He's going to press on the estrangement, on whether you had an existing conflict with Dennis. Did you? I thought about it. About Dennis and I as kids, sharing a bedroom in a house where quiet was survival and our father's moods were weather you tracked, the way farmers tracked rain. About the way Dennis had followed our father's example in everything, the posture, the jaw, the belt. About the way I'd gone into medicine, partly to fix things in a clinical setting because I couldn't fix anything at home. We didn't fight, I said. We just stopped being close. When? He married Diane. She was good for him. Then she left and he changed. That was 2019. And you kept your distance. I thought he needed space. I thought I stopped. I thought he was grieving. I thought the distance was him processing. I should have looked harder. Ellen nodded slowly. Don't say that on the stand. It sounds like guilt. Say instead, I noticed changes in my brother's behavior, and I respected what I believed was a need for privacy while he processed a difficult divorce. I looked at her. You're very good at this. I know. Gerald Holt's deposition lasted 2 hours. He was smart and precise, and found the gaps in my story the way a good surgeon finds the vein. He pressed on the 4 months between Dennis's divorce and my last visit. He pressed on why I hadn't asked more questions when Dennis dropped Maya off with so little information. He pressed on whether my medical expertise made me more likely to see pathology that wasn't there. I answered carefully, kept my hands still. 31 years. Did you believe your brother was abusing his daughter before this visit? Holt asked. I had no specific evidence of abuse before this visit. Did you have a reason to suspect it? I noticed Dennis had become more withdrawn and controlling in the years following his divorce. I had general concern, but no specific evidence. So you had no concrete reason to surveil your niece while she was in your home? I had every reason any responsible adult has. She was a child in my care. You photographed bruising on her arm. I documented a clinical finding. I'm a physician, a retired physician. You had no clinical relationship with this child. I had a family relationship with this child. Holt looked at me. You reported your own brother to Child Protective Services. Yes, knowing it would destroy his custody of his daughter, knowing it would protect her. He made a note. We'll continue this in court, Dr. Coleman. The hearing was October 9th. Franklin County Family Court. The old building on Mound Street that smelled like floor wax and bad decisions. Thomas flew in 2 days before and stayed in the guest room, and we ate bad takeout and played cards and didn't talk about it much, which was how Coleman men had always handled things they were afraid of. The night before, I sat in what used to be Maya's room during those 4 days in September. The bed was made. The yellow light was on. I'd kept the window cracked 2 inches because she'd liked the sound of the street. I held my phone, looked at the photos, her hands in the garden, her face over the biscuit dough, the single-eyed rabbit on the pillow. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Frank. It was Dennis. I stared at the wall. Please don't hang up. I'm not calling to fight. His voice was different than it had been in years. All the tightness was gone, and what was underneath was something raw and tired. Dennis, I need you to know something before tomorrow. I waited. I have been in therapy for the past 3 weeks. Since Patricia's visit, the therapist asked me to do something, and I said I couldn't, and then I did it anyway. She asked me to write down every rule I had for Maya and why I had it. He stopped. I heard him breathe. I wrote 4 pages. Frank, 4 pages of rules. And when I looked at the why column, every single reason was something our father said to me. Word for word. Things I swore I'd never say to my own kid. My throat was tight. I didn't know I was doing it. I swear to God I didn't know. I thought I was teaching her to be strong. I thought I was protecting her from being weak, like he always said. The way he said we were weak. Dennis, I know I'm not supposed to call you. I just needed you to know, before tomorrow, that I'm not going to fight it. What? Whatever the judge decides. If the judge gives you custody, I'm not going to fight it. She needs to be somewhere safe, and I can't guarantee right now that I'm that. He stopped again. I've been trying to be dad my whole life, and I thought it was strength, and it was just him, living in me, taking it out on her. I closed my eyes. Clint from therapy says it's generational, that it goes back further than him. He says if I do the work, I can break it. Then do the work. I'm going to. Dennis. Yeah. She asked about you. 2 days into the visit, whether you were going to be there when she got home from school. I'm telling you so you know she felt safe here. He made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Low and broken. Take care of her, Frank. Whatever happens. Take care of her the way she deserves. He hung up. I sat in the yellow room for a long time. The street outside moved through its ordinary night. A dog barked twice and went quiet. Somewhere a car radio faded past and disappeared. Some conversations stay private. Even between brothers, even in the middle of a war. The courtroom was ordinary. Brown carpet, fluorescent lights, the kind of acoustic ceiling that swallowed sound and turned everything muffled. Judge Catherine Welch had a reputation for patience and a shorter one for nonsense. She read the preliminary filings for 3 full minutes in silence before she looked up. Gerald Holt went first. He was precise and methodical and made the case for Dennis the way you make a case for a complicated client. Grieving father, difficult divorce, good intentions, gone sideways. He presented 3 character witnesses, a neighbor, a co-worker, Dennis's pastor. All of them said the same thing. Good man going through a hard time. Then Ellen stood. She laid out the photographs one at a time. She played 12 seconds of audio from the recording I'd made in the kitchen Friday morning. Maya's small voice. Am I in trouble? Then Ellen said nothing for a moment and let it sit. Mrs. Holloway testified. She brought her written observations, and she did not soften them. The child has been hoarding food in her jacket pockets since the first week of school. In my 23 years of teaching, I have seen this behavior in children who do not have reliable access to food at home. I reported it. I was told she was dramatic. Dr. Reardon submitted his written report and then sat in the witness box and answered questions with the quiet precision of someone who had seen enough of the world to have stopped being surprised by it. Patricia testified about the home visit, the locked cabinets, the slide bolt. She was calm and factual the way you have to be in courtrooms when the facts are ugly enough on their own. Then Dennis took the stand. He looked smaller than I'd seen him look since we were children. He answered Holt's questions in a voice that was trying to stay steady and not quite making it. He used the words my attorney instructed me to use about the rules, the structure, and I could hear the instruction in it the way I'd heard it in Maya's goodbye to me. Then Ellen stood. Mr. Harrison, she said, your daughter asked her uncle if she was allowed to eat. Can you explain that? Dennis's hands tightened on the arms of the chair. She was tested on her homework the night before and didn't do well. That morning's breakfast was restricted as a consequence. So she hadn't eaten since dinner the previous night. Correct. And was dinner the previous night complete? There was a pause. There had been some difficulty. Ellen looked at her papers. Your daughter is in the 15th percentile for weight and has vitamin deficiencies consistent with chronic insufficient caloric intake. Do you dispute the medical finding? No. When did you start using meal restriction as a disciplinary tool? Dennis's jaw worked. His eyes went to the table in front of him. I don't remember exactly. After Diane left, things got harder. I needed her to take things seriously. Did it work? The courtroom was very quiet. No, he said. Did your father use meal restriction as discipline when you were a child? Dennis's head dropped. Holt said, objection, relevance. And Judge Welch said overruled, and the room went still again. Mr. Harrison? Yes. His voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, he did. Ellen set her pen down. No further questions. Dennis's shoulders were shaking. He didn't cover his face. He sat in the witness box with his hands flat on the railing and his eyes wet, and he did not look for sympathy from anyone in the room, which was the most dignity I'd seen from him in years. I learned this from him, Dennis said. It wasn't even a question or an answer to anything. He just said it into the room. And I told myself I was doing it differently. But I wasn't. Judge Welch let the room hold that for a moment before she called a short recess. In the hallway, Thomas sat next to me on a wooden bench. He put his hand on my shoulder and didn't say anything. I was glad he didn't say anything. After recess, Maya gave her testimony in a closed session with a forensic interviewer. We heard the audio feed in a side room. Ellen's hand found my forearm and squeezed once when Maya described the cabinet locks, and I focused on keeping my breathing even. When she was asked if she had ever felt safe, she said, "At Uncle Frank's house." 3 words. I felt them in my sternum. Judge Welch deliberated for 5 days. The ruling came on a Friday, which seemed appropriate for a week that had started on a Friday 6 weeks earlier with biscuit dough and a borrowed rabbit. The courtroom had the same brown carpet and the same muffled silence. Thomas sat behind me. Ellen sat beside me. Across the aisle, Dennis sat alone. Renee had not come, and Gerald Holt sat close enough to the edge of his chair that it seemed like he might tip off it. "I have reviewed all testimony and submitted documentation," Judge Welch said. "I find that the child, Maya Harrison, has been subjected to systematic food restriction, physical confinement, and an environment of fear-based discipline that has resulted in documented malnutrition and significant psychological distress. These findings are clear and are not disputed by the weight of evidence." She looked at Dennis. "Mr. Harrison, your willingness to acknowledge the harm you've caused and your engagement in therapeutic services are noted. They do not change what happened. They may change what happens next." She folded her hands. "I am granting temporary full custody of the minor child to Dr. Frank Coleman, effective immediately. I am ordering supervised visitation for Mr. Harrison contingent upon continued therapeutic engagement. This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months. At that time, with demonstrated progress in treatment, we may consider graduated unsupervised contact." The gavel came down. Thomas made a sound next to me, something small and relieved. I didn't move for a moment, just sat with it, the weight of it, the relief of it. The knowledge that I was 63 years old and had a guest room with yellow walls and a child coming to live in it who still flinched when doors opened too fast. Ellen put a hand on my arm. "Frank, it's done." "It's not done," I said. "It's starting." Maya moved in on a Saturday with 2 bags and a box of books and the rabbit, who had acquired a name I hadn't known before. Gerald. I would not tell Gerald Holt this. Some things were private. She stood in the hallway of my house with her box of books and looked around the way you look at a place you've been told you're staying but don't quite believe yet. I showed her the room, the yellow walls, the window cracked 2 inches. "You can put things on the shelves if you want," I said. "This is your room. You can make it look however you want." She looked at the shelves for a long time. Then she said, "Can I put Gerald on the windowsill? Gerald can have the whole windowsill." She put him there, sat him facing out. He looked out over the backyard with his single eye while the afternoon light came in warm around him. The first week was quiet. She ate everything and still watched the door sometimes. And on Wednesday night, I heard her up at 2 in the morning and went to check and found her in the kitchen, not distressed, just sitting at the table in the dark, the way she had that first Friday. I sat across from her. Didn't turn the light on. "Can't sleep?" She shook her head. We sat in the dark together for a while. Outside, a car passed. The neighbor's motion light clicked on and off over nothing. "Uncle Frank." "Yeah. Are we going to have biscuits again sometime?" "Yeah. Whenever you want. Can we have them for breakfast? Like, as a regular thing? Not just for a special occasion?" I thought about that. "They can be a regular thing," I said. "Nothing about biscuits requires a special occasion." She considered this with the gravity of someone accepting a new constitutional amendment. "Okay," she said. Then she went back to bed. The food hoarding I found on week 2. A Ziploc of crackers under the nightstand. 2 granola bars in the pocket of her winter coat, which was already hung in the closet because it was barely October. An apple core wrapped in a napkin in the back of her sock drawer. I didn't take them, didn't mention them, just made sure the kitchen was always stocked. Left a small basket on her dresser with crackers and dried fruit and told her it was a snack basket for her room in case she got hungry at night. Didn't make it a thing. Just a basket. The basket disappeared into the nightstand within a day. But over the next 3 weeks, the Ziploc of crackers under the nightstand slowly got smaller as she stopped replacing what she ate. And one morning, I noticed she'd gone to the kitchen in the morning without the rabbit tucked under her arm like a security measure. Just walked in barehanded and said, "Can we have oatmeal? The kind with the brown sugar?" Small victories. I was learning to count them. Thomas called every other night from Austin. She talked to him sometimes, short conversations, but she always held the phone like it was something precious after they hung up. The nightmares were twice a week for the first month, once a week in November. I got good at sleeping lightly. My back complained. I bought a better floor mat for her room and left it rolled in the corner. And after the 3rd time I slept on it, she said, "Uncle Frank, you don't have to do that. You have a bed." And I said, "I know. I want to be here." She didn't argue again. In mid-November, Patricia called. Dennis has completed 6 weeks of intensive therapy. He's requesting a supervised visit. I sat with that. What does Maya think? She's been told he's in therapy. She asked if he was sad. She asked if he was learning to be different. What did you tell her? That we hoped so. Does she want to see him? She hasn't said no. That's different from yes, Patricia. I know. But Frank, she's 8. Whatever she feels about him is complicated, and it's going to be complicated for a long time, and denying him contact indefinitely doesn't uncomplicate it. It might make it harder. I thought about Dennis on the phone the night before the hearing. 4 pages of rules. Every single reason was something our father said. Schedule it, I said. My house. I'm present the entire time. Dennis came on a Saturday in late November. He drove up in a car I didn't recognize, a smaller one, and parked carefully, and sat in it for a minute before he got out. He looked like someone had put him through a year in 6 weeks. Thinner. The jaw no longer set the way our father's jaw used to set. Maya was in the living room with Gerald on the windowsill. I'd told her he was coming. She'd taken the rabbit off the windowsill and held him. Dennis came to the door, and I let him in. He stood in my hallway and looked at his daughter across the room, and his face did something complicated and human and completely different from anything I'd seen on it in years. Maya, he said. His voice was quiet. Hi, sweetheart. She looked at him for a long moment. Hi, Daddy. He sat on the floor, which surprised me. Not on the couch, on the floor, a few feet away from where she was, making himself smaller, making himself less. I'm sorry, he said. I know that might not mean much right now. I've been learning why I did the things I did, and I'm learning how to do things differently, and I know sorry isn't enough by itself. But I wanted you to know that. Maya looked at him with those careful old eyes. She looked at Gerald. She looked at her father. Mrs. Holloway says sorry means you try to change, she said. Your teacher is right, Dennis said. That's exactly what it means. Are you trying? Every day. The hour passed slowly and quietly. They talked about a cartoon she liked. He told her about a dog his friend had. She showed him Gerald's name. He said it was a good name without asking why, and that restraint cost him something. I could see it cost him something, and he paid it. When the hour was up, he stood and said goodbye, and didn't ask for anything. No promises extracted. He walked to the door and paused. Frank, I looked at him. Thank you. I thought about what to say to that. About the 4-page list. About our father's belt. About a dead tree in a yard and a little girl locked in her room. Do the work, I said. For yourself. Not for visitation. Not for court. For you. So this stops. He nodded. The door closed. I turned around. Maya was still on the floor with Gerald. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, Is he going to be okay? I thought he might be, I said. She considered that. Then she went back to the cartoon like it was enough. Like maybe it was. December came in cold. I raked leaves and Maya helped badly, and we made hot chocolate and drank it on the porch while Carol waved from across the street. We made biscuits on 3 separate Saturdays, which had quietly become a regular thing that required no special occasion. The basket on her dresser still held crackers, but she'd started leaving the Ziploc bags in the kitchen instead of hiding them in her room, and I took that as a kind of progress that didn't need to be named. On a Tuesday evening in mid-December, I was washing dishes when Maya came in from the living room and stood in the kitchen doorway in the way kids stand when they want to say something and aren't sure how. Yeah? I said. She came in and sat at the table. Uncle Frank, can I ask you something? Of course. She turned Gerald over in her hands. Why did you do all of this? I turned the water off and dried my hands and sat across from her. Because you're my niece, I said. But you hadn't seen me in a long time. That was my mistake. She looked at me carefully. But how did you know? She said. That something was wrong. How did you know from just breakfast? I thought about that. About the fork trembling. About relief on the face of an 8-year-old. I've spent a lot of years paying attention to children, I said. I got good at it. And you are very easy to care about. She looked down at Gerald. He looked back with his one eye. I wrote a letter to my teacher, she said, for a thank you project. I wrote one to Mrs. Holloway and one to Mr. Reardon, and I wrote one to you. She reached into her pocket and set a folded paper on the table between us. Purple crayon. I could tell from the edge. I didn't touch it. Whenever you want me to read it, I said. You can read it now. I picked it up, unfolded it. The handwriting was careful and slightly crooked, and in the particular earnest cursive of a second grader trying very hard. Dear Uncle Frank, thank you for making eggs. Thank you for not being scary. Thank you for the basket. Thank you for the biscuits. I feel safe here. Love, Maya. P.S. Gerald says thank you too. I folded it back up. My throat was tight. Tell Gerald he's welcome, I said. She smiled. First a small one, then the real one. The one like the laugh about the beagle named Walter. I set the letter on the counter next to the dish rack. Outside the kitchen window, the December dark came early, and the neighbors' lights were on, and the street was ordinary and quiet. Tomorrow would have its own complications. The 6-month review was coming, and Dennis was doing the work, and there would be questions about what came next, and I was 63 years old with a bad back and a floor mat in the corner of the guest room and a basket of crackers that was slowly becoming less necessary. But tonight the biscuit cutter was on the counter where she'd left it after Sunday, and Gerald was on the kitchen table, and my niece was sitting across from me in the warm light, and when I asked if she wanted hot chocolate, she said yes please without hesitating. Not, am I allowed? Just yes. Yes please. That was enough. That was everything. If this story meant something to you, please leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Subscribe to Stormborn Vengeance for more stories like this one, and click the next video to keep listening.